Future proof. Welcome, everybody. You are serious about compliance if you're here on the last session. So this is going to be really, really a great session. I appreciate being here, and it's been such a terrific conference. So let's talk about compliance. You know, we are in wealth management, and you realize that everything really goes around compliance, whether you want to use technology, whether you want to communicate with your clients, whether you want to create a new product, whether you want to create a new RIA, everything goes down to compliance. And, you know, basically, regulation has always played a bit of catch up. The SEC was established in 1934, and they were established to for the protection of what happened after the Great Depression. But fast forward nearly a century, and now we have digital currency, and we have communications and technology and AI, and really regulation has played a bit of a catch-up. So what we're talking about today is really the technology behind that you need to go behind your firm no matter what you're doing, staying ahead of the curve with technology. And at the end of the day, if you're building a firm, if you're building a product, if you're doing something, you really need to think about scale first, how to create scale. And compliance sometimes is not something easily scalable. So we're going to dig into this today. So Larry, let's start with you, the evolution of basically compliance. So as I said earlier, SEC's existed since 1934. Compliance software, relatively new. How has the evolution of technology shaped the way our firms manage compliance today?
Yeah, great question. So compliance is not that overly exciting topic that everybody wants to talk about or look at for technology, especially if you're an entrepreneur like myself. It's always been like CRM or financial planning or portfolio management tools, et cetera, new note takers, things like that. Today, over the past 20 years, we really had maybe 2 or 3 compliance software products that have been out there that really were perfect, right? They fit the bill, they check the box for compliance. But today, with the explosion of apps, text messaging, client communication in every different way across the board, there's a lot more new technology that's coming out that's going to help revolutionize the way that we're looking at compliance and also make it a lot easier.
Again, there's like this fragmentation. I think, we see a lot of firms trying to catch up because there's just so many new ways to communicate, right? There's Slack, there's WhatsApp. How are you, what are you seeing, like, how are firms catching up, and what are you doing to be able to help them?
Yeah, it's interesting because we have conversations every day with financial institutions, whether they're RIAs, broker-dealers, asset managers. And we've heard recently, can you archive Signal? Can you archive Telegram, because they're in the crypto space? And then recently, this one caught me off guard because I never heard of it before. In the last 2 weeks, I had firms call me up and ask me if we could archive cacao. Has anyone heard of cacao? Yeah, me neither.
Right? I thought it was a drink or something.
Right, I thought I thought they were messing with me or something. So I looked it up, and it was Korea's WeChat or WhatsApp. So these asset managers that work with Koreans, they only could communicate with them through Kakao. So it's not going to stop. There's going to be continuous apps that are coming out there with ways that advisors and financial employees have to communicate with their clients. And we're hopefully, not just us, but other financial software compliance products will continue to add those apps to help you stay compliant.
So we're going to move. Michelle, you have had an insider's view to the SEC. She actually worked for the SEC, which is fantastic. From a regulatory perspective, throughout this evolution and technology revolution and everything, what have you seen as basically, what has changed from the perspective of the SEC?
So I left the SEC January of last year, right, after almost a decade. The SEC is a government entity, regulatory body, and as you expect, they're more reactionary to the market. And of course, whether it's budgetary constraints, bureaucracy constraints, things happen slowly. Change moves slowly. But in that front, I am pleased to see that, they announced in February the formation of their, the cybersecurity and emerging tech unit, right? Their mandate is to regulate the bad actors when it comes to cybersecurity, emerging technology, but one of their missions is to protect innovation, right? They want to protect retail investors, RIAs' confidence in innovation through their regulation.
Yeah, it's definitely, again, I've just seen, over my decades of working in wealth, it's been compliance has been more of a burden than an accelerator for firms. And so again, if you're building a firm or building something, you really need to think about the technology that you're putting in place to not only keep yourself safe, but to keep your clients safe. So Michelle, you've seen when transitioning, you work now for a regulation technology firm as well, right? So when firms are transferring legacy compliance systems to modern RegTech solutions, what steps do you think they should take to maintain regulatory continuity, while maximizing efficiency?
Well, I'd like to take it back a little bit, right, to the pandemic while I was still at the commission and give some sort of nuggets to the secret sauce. So during that time, exams still continued, right? And the commission, at least while I was there, saw many advisors that just had difficulty providing some records, even though they were in, especially because they were in a remote environment, right? But the expectation was still there from the agency standpoint that they would be able to provide these records. Now, they did provide allowances, but I think some key takeaways, especially, at ACA, is that our clients should be able to streamline, and especially from the agency expectations, right? The commission's expectations. You ought to be able to streamline your record keeping and your workflow integration to the point that everything is automated. There should be no delay. You can access anything, within minutes, within hours, and be able to provide it to clients, to internally to your staff, and to the commission if they come knocking on your door.
So Larry, firms are very resistant to change, and I'd say even in the compliance area, that's even slower to change. Inertia is a big, real thing. What do you think the biggest roadblocks firms are, to adopt new compliance technology? What are you seeing the biggest roadblocks, and how do you think we can help them navigate that?
Yeah, so roadblocks sometimes are the firms, right? Whether they're a small firm or large firm, not keeping up with the technology that's out there. And then unfortunately, some of the other roadblocks are the previous providers that they're using today. The data is kind of stuck there. If they want to get their data out, they have to pay these exorbitant fees to get the data out to move over to a new provider with new technology. So that's one of the biggest sticking points that we see out there. But the good news is people are just getting so frustrated with some of the older technology that they're willing to pay those fees to make the switch.
Yeah, I mean, again, I've seen this a lot in the M&A space when you're bringing firms together and you're trying to, get your data from one place to another. But I would say there is this idea of a one-time cost versus ongoing pain. Paying a little bit more now to actually create a scalable enterprise going forward is, you're just not seeing the forest through the trees. So don't let, maybe this one big uptime cost really, help you, not let you go navigate through the next phase. Don't let inertia or that one-time cost, because at the end of the day, you need to build a scalable organization, and you need great technology to be able to do that. So I'd like to move on to e-coms that we talked about before, AI, and basically the future of surveillance. Michelle, firms are experience what I would say is e-com fatigue, with over $3 billion in SEC fines in the past 3 years. Do you think the SEC will continue this enforcement sweeps? What distinction is it making around messaging apps, collaboration tools, and social media?
Well, I think social media has been pretty entrenched with the SEC from a marketing perspective for a couple of years now. I don't think that we're going to continue to see those big enforcement sweeps, right? I think they've been messaging pretty clearly that we're going to slow down on those. But, and a big but, big however, the review is going to be deeply entrenched in the exams program, right? Every review, that's going to be a regular part of routine exams, whether they're one-off exams, exams will continue. And where enforcement will come in, and this is where enforcement has the low-hanging fruit. While they may not be doing sweeps, if exams finds any findings, deficiencies, they put them in a letter. What they'll do is they'll conduct a corrective action review, right? So they'll come back to your firm within 1 or 2 years. If they find repeated findings, that's low-hanging fruit for enforcement. They'll easily take that, quickly write up an action, and that's something that the commissioners, in my experience, being there over 8 years, they will easily approve, right? On regular enforcement actions, they want to know what investor harm, what was the harm to your clients. But if this is a repeat finding, they're like, okay, slam dunk, we approve.
So are you seeing any technology that helps with this, or with helping with the exam process? Is that something you guys do with your firm?
It is. So we use AI-driven, and of course, this is a common theme here. We are big on embracing emerging technology, embracing AI, using it as surveillance tools, streamlining the automation. We have plenty of software that helps all different types of firms within the financial industry.
Yeah, and we'll talk more about AI in a little bit, because we can't go to a future-proof conference or technology conference without talking about AI. But Larry, you actually work with global firms, so I think you have an even bigger lens than just what we're seeing here in the U.S. What are you seeing around communication compliance right now globally?
Yeah, well, not just globally, but more so here in the States. Like, it's the elephant in the room. How many people are carrying around 2 cell phones, right? Because they need to be compliant. It's like the old BlackBerry days, right? Where we had a phone and a BlackBerry. We shouldn't be going backwards. We should be going forward. So, as an entrepreneur, we're always trying to make the efficiencies easier and better. And what we've done at Archive Intel is you now have the ability to archive your texts on your personal phone, whether it's iMessage with iPhone or your Android or even your WhatsApp. And the way that we're doing that is you could download your contacts and then segment your client contacts and prospects separate from your personal text, so we never capture those personal texts. So that's one of the big inventions that we've created at Archive Intel to make your lives a lot easier, and hopefully your firms will ditch those second phones so you're not carrying them around these days.
We miss those days of which phone should I answer? And then they don't use the right phone anyways. You've probably seen situations where they've had 2 phones and then they came in and looked at them, they're not using it. I mean, have you seen anything like that where?
Yeah, so there was one firm, great example, is a firm in New York. I won't mention any names. They started with an app with a different phone number, and they were trying to utilize that and capture the text. Wasn't really working that well. Then they switched and they provided another phone to all their employees, so they're carrying around 2 phones. 3 months later, the SEC comes in and they perform an audit, and they were fined $50 million. So again, that was where we really saw the idea of have the ability for advisors and employees at these financial institutions to be able to just use their phone and archive that data a lot easier. And it doesn't stop there. I mean, with the AI and the trends that we're seeing is there's other areas of the compliance process and review. And Michelle and I have talked about this, where there's this flag false positives, right? So you're flagging anything that comes in, and a lot of these firms will have hundreds of thousands of flag reviews that they have to go through on a monthly basis. With AI and training the models properly, we could reduce that by 99%.
That's amazing. I mean, as anybody that knows running a wealth firm is like, it's always like, what I miss. I hope I catch something, right?
Right. We're just trying to make it a lot easier for these compliance teams and firms to get through that process and focus on other areas that are more important. We also added an AI agent to perform the random review for them on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis. So again, at least on the e-com side, reducing that time spent there by at least 85%.
So I heard a new term that I've never heard before, and it's called AI washing. So, we all know what greenwashing is, or at least we think we know what greenwashing is, but basically what AI washing is the practice of overstating, misrepresenting, or misleading stakeholders about the use of AI in products, services, and your business models. So, Michelle, the SEC is paying close attention to this right now with this AI around AI washing and disclosure accuracy. Can you help us understand, like, what is this? How should firms actually be thinking about AI compliance? Because I think a lot of firms are like dabbling into it. Obviously, there's lots of tech, but I think there's just like this fear. So tell us a little bit about this AI washing idea.
Sure, I'll give an example, which may be a little oversimplified, but I think it gets the point home. So let's say I'm an advisor, and I'm telling my clients that I use AI in my trading algorithms, right? I'm running models driven by AI, and that's how I'm making your investments. But in reality, I'm sitting at home, sitting on my couch, and I'm throwing darts at a wall, and that's how I'm picking your investments, right? That would be AI washing, a complete misrepresentation of how you're using AI. The way firms should look at it, right? Because we come from the position of being a compliance, risk, and technology firm. So we approach our clients with, okay, let us help you with your policies and procedures around AI, and marketing and how it's all used, right? We help firms establish controls. How are you using it? How are you going to test it? How are you going to look at it? And then from a technology standpoint, let us run everything through our marketing system so we can catch things, so we can review it for you. And this is, I think, a common theme of this conference is leveraging the use of technology. Embrace it, leverage your resources, so you can spend your time elsewhere.
So Larry, actually something came out on the FINRA today that I shared with you, that they're actually asking for new ideas, which I think is like, how can we be better, and how can we stay ahead of the curve? They have also set an expectation for AI oversight. So, what should firms consider when evaluating these AI RegTech providers, or basically AI providers?
Yeah, I read that. Thank you for sharing that. I saw the same FINRA report today. So I think it's more what they were trying to drive at FINRA around the remote workplace, the communications back and forth, whether it's internal or external, implementing things like Slack and making sure that the firm is archiving that information. So I just think that over time we're just going to see more and more of these. These apps and enforcements, whether it's FINRA or the SEC. Who knows with the new administration if it's going to be enforced as much as it used to. We may see a little lax here for the next 4 years, but at the end of the day, those 4 years are going to come up, and if you don't have the right technology in place, you don't know who's going to be in the next administration to enforce those rules and crack down again on all these fines that we're seeing.
So when they're doing the evaluation, what's like a good diligence? Where do you start from a diligence standpoint?
Yeah, so there's been recently in the past year, firms now have to do their due diligence on third-party vendors. So most of the firms, ACA, Archive Intel, and others, hopefully they're doing this, but they're providing like a data room for the due diligence documents, so they could go in there, review it, make sure that the firm is up to par and up to speed with all their business continuity plans, disaster recovery, and if they're utilizing AI, what do those AI policies say? That's really the key thing, especially if they're using generative AI. You may want to dig a little bit deeper in that to make sure that they're not utilizing your data.
So the new marketing rules, we're going to move on to the new marketing rules, basically the new compliance channel, challenges around that. So the SEC has the new marketing rule is evolving, particularly around testimonials, historical performance reporting. Is this, Rochelle, becoming the next texting crisis?
I think there's always been a focus on marketing. So I don't know, that'll be the next texting crisis. But I think as the SEC shifts its focus back to retail investors, they are definitely going to hone in on, the use of third-party ratings, testimonials, paid referrals, endorsers, and definitely always, always, always performance, right? Performance calculations, extracted performance, anything performance related, I think they'll focus on.
Yeah, but there's this, again, when you talk about technology, we've seen there's actually new technology around to be able to use for your testimonial. So, again, is try to, try to be as tech enabled as possible, and go the safety route. So Larry, when compliance compliance approaches are proving the most effective of staying ahead of this marketing rule. Like, is there anything you've seen kind of like people can kind of stay ahead of the marketing rule from a compliance and rules enforcement perspective?
Yeah, so ACA and Archive Intel and a few other compliance software solutions out there are now offering an AI marketing review process, which is really cool. I love how everyone's doing it. We're doing it similar, where you upload your marketing document, AI scans it, shows you anything that's out of compliance compared to your original document, and then if there's like, say, 3 items they're not compliant, it'll list like 1, 2, 3. It'll give you recommendations from AI to replace that language, or you could edit and replace it yourself, and then submit that to the compliance or the marketing person that's reviewing that information. It captures all the versions in an audit trail, and at the end of the day, AI does a lot, but you still need a compliance person to review that and approve it and send it back. But the AI is making the whole marketing review process streamlined and a lot easier and faster these days.
Yeah, I've seen in firms too, the time it takes to get something reviewed and which version of it and how many versions and who changed it, to be able to have a tool like that can, number one, is look through your stuff, say these are the different versions of it, here it is, save the last version of it. Again, it's about building a scalable organization, and you really need to embrace technology, because right now, most of this stuff is people-powered. And, people cost a lot more than technology, and so you need the human at the front end of it. You always need to have somebody that is understanding what's going on, but as much you can do to use technology to create an efficient organization, I think, the better you're going to be in the end.
Yeah, it doesn't stop there. I mean, ACA does this really well with the trade surveillance and monitoring with the AI overlay. There's also the attestation part. So they built out the full platform. We're building out other areas of that platform as well. And the great thing is technology is advancing so fast, and the AI portion of that is really helping companies like ours provide better solutions that make your processes more efficient and a lot easier.
Michelle, tell us a little bit about the trade, how you're using AI to look over the trading and the trade files.
So we can take a firm's trading activity, whether it's employee trading, whether it's your individual investment advisors. It feeds into our system, and it'll give outputs, right? Items of interest that compliance needs to look at or review. And it could be nothing. It gives a window into all the activity and consolidating it and reducing the human hours, right? Leveraging your resources again.
Yeah. And again, if you are at all acquisitive and you're buying firms and then you've got trading in different systems in different places, to be able to have something that can kind of read over everywhere and bring something together, so you're not constantly, again, this idea of what am I missing. So I don't think people take it as serious, trade compliance, and being able to use tools to, again, instead of just catching and hoping, really kind of like highlighting, looking, and confirming that you're really going to be okay going forward. So, as we close this out, what do you think the future looks like when it comes to compliance? What are we not thinking about right now, Larry?
I think we're thinking of everything, right, which is great. The AI portion, the data, the way that's been done in the past, how do we make it more efficient? Don't be afraid of AI. Don't fear it. Embrace it. It's really going to help everyone's day-to-day activities and free up a lot of time for your firm to focus on what's more important, which is growing your business and taking care of your clients. So as Dan Ives said yesterday, we are early with AI. We are in, I would say, first inning. There's a long way to go. In 2 to 3 years from now, it's not going to be to press the button. You'll still need people to review it, the human side of it. Yeah. But it's going to be really cool stuff. I'm excited what we're building. I love to see what other companies are building. And again, I would just say embrace the technology and make the change.
How about you, Michelle? You want to take us out with anything what you're seeing in the future here and what we should be thinking around from technology embracement and anything you can leave us with?
I echo what Larry said. I think the next 4 years is a time to really embrace technology. I think the commission in their own way is supporting it, so do it now, do it fast, and leverage your resources, manage that risk.
All right. Well, I hope everybody enjoyed the session today. And Future Proof, thank you for having us in such a great, amazing venue. Here we're on the beach. Can't ask for anything better than that. I'll see everybody soon. Thank you.